The autumn breeze carried the scent of pine and wood smoke as I stood at the edge of the gathering, watching silently as I had for the past decade. My fingers traced the small silver pendant at my throat, a nightingale with wings spread in flight, the last gift from my grandmother before she passed. "Your voice is your power," she had whispered to me, "but sometimes silence is your shield." Those words had become my mantra, my salvation, and my prison. The great hall buzzed with excitement as pack members prepared for the Harvest Moon celebration. Crystal glasses clinked, laughter echoed against stone walls, and the massive fireplace cast dancing shadows across the polished floors. I'd been assigned to arrange flowers for the banquet tables, a task fitting for someone like me, someone invisible. My pack, the Silver Crescent, had always valued strength above all else: voice, presence, dominance. These were the currencies of power, and I, with my slender frame and light blonde hair that seemed to catch every stray beam of sunlight, had learned early that to be heard was to be hunted. So I chose silence. Not because I couldn't speak, but because I wouldn't. 10 years ago, when I was just 16, I made the decision after overhearing a truth so devastating it threatened not just my safety, but the entire pack's stability. That night, as blood pooled on forest leaves and thunder masked my screams, I swore I would never utter another word. The healers had called it trauma, a convenient explanation for my sudden muteness. Only I knew the truth. Lily! Flora, the pack's event coordinator, gestured frantically at me from across the room. "We need more arrangements by the head table. The Alpha King arrives in an hour." I nodded, gathering my supplies. The Alpha King. Even thinking about him sent a chill down my spine. King Xavier Stone had unified the 7 werewolf kingdoms after centuries of bloody territory wars, earning him the title of Alpha King. He ruled with uncompromising authority, and rumor had it he could sense deception, like others sensed fear. I had never seen him in person. Our pack was small, insignificant in the grand hierarchy of werewolf politics, but tonight he would be here, conducting his yearly inspection of the outlying territories. As I worked, arranging blood-red roses and white lilies in crystal vases, I caught snippets of conversation around me. They say he killed his own brother to take the throne. He can break the will of any wolf with just his stare. Never takes a mate because no one is strong enough. I kept my head down, my movements efficient. I'd perfected the art of being present, yet invisible, necessary, yet forgettable. My fingers bled slightly as a thorn pierced my skin, and I quickly dabbed the drop away before it could stain the white tablecloth. Pain was another thing I'd learned to hide. The Pax Beta approached the head table, inspecting my work with critical eyes. James had always been kind to me in his distracted way, the way one is kind to a stray cat that occasionally proves useful. "Good work, Lily," he said, not expecting a response beyond my customary nod. "The king has particular tastes." Everything must be perfect. I thought of the small room I occupied in the pack house basement, how I'd carefully pressed my only decent dress for tonight. All pack members were required to attend the formal welcome, even those who typically remained in the shadows. Part of me hoped I would be overlooked, permitted to slip away after the initial ceremonies. Another part, a part I rarely acknowledged, was curious about the man whose name made alphas tremble. The massive double doors opened suddenly, sending a blast of cold air through the great hall. My heart stuttered as a collective hush fell over the room. "He's early," someone whispered, panic evident in their voice. I kept arranging flowers, fingers trembling slightly. If I didn't look up, perhaps I wouldn't be noticed. Perhaps. "Everyone out except the Alpha and his council," commanded a voice that seemed to reverberate through my very bones. It was deep, authoritative, and somehow ancient, as though it carried the weight of many lifetimes within it. Pack members scattered instantly. I moved to follow, gathering my supplies with shaking hands. "You, the blonde with the flowers. Stay." My blood turned to ice. I slowly raised my eyes, meeting a gaze so intense it felt like being struck by lightning. The Alpha King stood less than 20 feet away, surrounded by guards who looked more like warriors from ancient legends than modern wolves. But I barely noticed them. All I could see was him. He was taller than any man I'd ever seen, with broad shoulders draped in a black cloak trimmed with silver fur. His face could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and uncompromising lines. His hair was as black as midnight, contrasting starkly with eyes that gleamed like molten silver in the firelight. A scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, not diminishing his beauty but enhancing it somehow, telling a story of survival. But it wasn't his appearance that held me frozen. It was the way he looked at me, as though he could see through every layer of pretense I'd built around myself, as though he recognized something in me that even I had forgotten existed. "Leave us," he said to his guards, his eyes never leaving mine. "Your Majesty," one began to protest. "Now." They withdrew reluctantly, closing the massive doors behind them. The sound echoed like a death knell in the now empty hall. I stood paralyzed, clutching a half-arranged bouquet, roses crushed in my grip. He approached with the fluid grace of a predator, unhurried and confident. Each step he took forward sent me mentally retreating further into myself. He circled me slowly, assessing. I kept my eyes lowered now, a posture of submission I'd perfected over years of avoiding attention. My pendant seemed to grow heavier against my skin, my grandmother's words echoing. "Silence is your shield. Lily, is it?" he asked, his voice softer now but no less commanding. I nodded, not trusting myself to do anything else. "They tell me you don't speak. That trauma stole your voice a decade ago." He stopped directly before me, close enough that I could smell his scent, like cedar and storm clouds and something wild that defied description. How interesting. I didn't react, keeping my breathing even with effort. Many had tried to get me to speak over the years, through kindness, through trickery, through sudden frights. None had succeeded. This man, king or not, would be no different. "Look at me," he commanded. I raised my eyes reluctantly, meeting his gaze once more. What happened next shattered my world in 5 simple words. His lips curved into a smile that contained no warmth, only absolute certainty. "I've heard your voice, Lily." My bouquet fell to the floor, petals scattering across polished stone like drops of blood. Impossible. No one had heard me speak in 10 years. I had been careful, so careful. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper meant only for me. 3 nights ago, by the Eastern Creek. You were alone, or thought you were. You sang a lullaby. Your grandmother's lullaby. Terror coursed through me like ice water. 3 nights ago, I had gone to the secluded creek, where I occasionally, very occasionally, allowed myself to break my silence. It was my only release, those rare moments of solitude where I could remember what it felt to be myself. I had been certain no one was within miles. "How?" I mouthed, unable to stop myself. "I have been watching this pack for longer than you realize," he said, reaching out to touch the nightingale pendant at my throat. His fingers brushed my skin, sending an unexpected jolt of warmth through my body. "The question is, little nightingale, why does someone with such a beautiful voice choose to lock it away?" I stepped back, shaking my head. This wasn't happening. This man, this king, couldn't possibly know my secret, and yet the evidence stood before me, watching me with eyes that seemed to glow with inner light. "You carry a secret," he continued, his voice hypnotic. "One heavy enough to silence you for a decade. I wonder..." He tilted his head, studying me as though I were a puzzle he was determined to solve. "Is it the same secret I've been hunting for all these years?" My heart threatened to break through my ribs. What did he know? What was he seeking? The secret I carried would destroy lives, upset the delicate balance of power among the packs. It couldn't be the same one. It couldn't. "You will attend me tonight," he said, his tone making it clear this was not a request. "At dinner you will sit at my right hand, and afterward, little nightingale, you and I will have a private conversation." Fear and something else, something I refused to name, coursed through me. I shook my head again, more forcefully. He smiled, a predator confident in his hunt. "You've hidden behind silence for a decade, Lily. But did you never wonder why no one came for you, after what you witnessed? Did you never question why you were allowed to live, carrying the knowledge that you do?" I couldn't breathe. The room seemed to spin around me. "Someone has protected you all these years," he said, reaching out to tuck a strand of my light hair behind my ear. "Someone who knew your value, even if you didn't." The doors opened again as his guards returned. The Alpha King stepped back, his face resuming its impassive mask. "Until tonight," he said, the words both a promise and a threat. As he turned to leave, I remained frozen, my world collapsing and rebuilding itself around this new reality. For 10 years, silence had been my refuge, my protection. But as I watched him walk away, I realized with perfect clarity that my carefully constructed sanctuary had been an illusion all along. Tonight, one way or another, the truth would emerge, and with it, perhaps, my voice. The hours before dinner passed in a blur. I moved through the pack house like a ghost, my mind racing as I prepared myself for what was to come. In my small basement room, I stared at my reflection in the cracked mirror. Pale skin, wide green eyes filled with apprehension, blonde hair falling in waves past my shoulders. I looked fragile, easily broken. It was an appearance that had served me well, encouraging others to underestimate me, but the Alpha King had seen something else. I slipped on my only formal dress, a simple midnight blue gown that had once belonged to my mother. It was outdated by pack standards, lacking the flashy embellishments favored by the higher-ranked females, but its simplicity suited me. Around my neck, the silver nightingale seemed to grow heavier with each passing minute, a constant reminder of my grandmother's words. "Your voice is your power." Had she known this day would come? A soft knock at my door startled me from my thoughts. Flora stood there, her expression a mixture of curiosity and concern. "The Alpha King requested that you wear this," she said, holding out a silver box tied with black ribbon. My fingers trembled as I accepted it, lifting the lid to reveal a gown of shimmering silver, delicate as moonlight. Beneath it lay a matching pair of slippers and a hair comb inlaid with what appeared to be diamonds. Flora's eyes widened. "Lily, what is happening? Why would he?" I shook my head, cutting off her questions. Even if I had been willing to speak, I had no answers to give. I gestured for her to leave, and after a moment's hesitation, she complied, closing the door behind her. Alone again, I ran my fingers over the fabric of the gown. It seemed to ripple like water beneath my touch, catching the dim light of my room and transforming it into something magical, a gift from the Alpha King. But why? Was it meant to put me at ease, or to mark me as his in some way? With no choice but to comply, I changed into the new gown. It fit perfectly, as though it had been made specifically for me, the fabric flowing around my body like liquid silver. The hair comb, when placed in my upswept hair, caught the light with every movement, creating the illusion of stars scattered through blonde waves. I looked like someone else entirely, someone who might belong at an Alpha King's side, if only for an evening of political formalities. The thought sent a shiver through me that wasn't entirely fear. Another knock, firmer this time. Beta James stood in the hallway, his expression carefully neutral. "It's time," he said simply. "The Alpha King awaits." I followed him through corridors unusually empty of pack members. "They've all been seated already," James explained, noticing my questioning glance. "The king requested you enter separately." My anxiety spiked. Being the center of attention went against everything I had cultivated for the past decade. I had perfected the art of entering rooms unnoticed, of blending into backgrounds, of becoming forgettable even as I observed everything. As we approached the great hall, the murmur of many voices grew louder. Music played, something classical and elegant that I didn't recognize. James paused at the massive oak doors, studying me with an expression I couldn't interpret. "Lily," he said, lowering his voice, "whatever happens in there, remember where your loyalty lies." Before I could react to this strange warning, he pushed the doors open, and every head in the room turned toward us. No, toward me. The great hall had been transformed since morning. Hundreds of candles created a warm golden glow, and the long tables were arranged in a U-shape, with the Alpha King seated at the center of the head table. As I entered, conversation died, replaced by a silence so complete I could hear the gentle hiss of candle flames. Beta James guided me forward, and I kept my eyes lowered, feeling the weight of countless stares. When I dared to glance up, I saw expressions ranging from confusion to outright hostility, particularly from the higher-ranked females who had clearly expected to be granted the honor of sitting near the king. And then my eyes found him. The Alpha King watched my approach with an intensity that made my skin flush. He had changed for dinner, now dressed in formal attire. A black suit cut to emphasize his powerful build, with silver embroidery that matched my gown. The connection wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Whispers began to ripple through the gathered pack members. "Welcome, Lily," he said as I reached the head table, his voice carrying effortlessly through the hall. He gestured to the empty seat at his right hand. "Please, join me." As I took my place beside him, I was acutely aware of how this must appear to others. I, who had existed on the periphery for so long, now seated in a position of highest honor. I could feel the alpha of our pack, Thomas, watching from further down the table, his expression unreadable. The Alpha King leaned closer, his breath warm against my ear. "You look beautiful," he murmured. "Silver suits you. It matches your secret." I stiffened, keeping my eyes fixed on the empty plate before me. "Relax," he said, his voice laced with amusement. "We have all evening for truths. For now, eat. Enjoy the celebration." Servers appeared, presenting elaborate dishes, roasted meats, exotic fruits, delicacies I'd never seen before. I ate little, my stomach too knotted with anxiety to accept more than a few bites. The Alpha King, meanwhile, engaged in conversation with those around him, displaying none of the coldness I had witnessed earlier. He was charming, attentive, even humorous at times. Pack members who had arrived trembling with fear gradually relaxed under his unexpected warmth. But every few minutes, his attention would return to me, his silver eyes assessing, as though checking that I hadn't somehow escaped. Each time our gazes met, something passed between us, a current of awareness that made my pulse quicken. As the meal progressed, I became aware of a woman watching me from across the room. She sat among the king's entourage, but slightly apart, her dark eyes never leaving my face. Unlike the others, her expression held neither curiosity nor hostility, only a strange recognition that unsettled me deeply. "That's Veda," the Alpha King said, following my gaze. "My seer. She's been quite interested in meeting you." I raised an eyebrow in question. "She has dreams," he explained, cutting into the perfectly cooked venison on his plate. "Sometimes about the past, sometimes about futures that might be. She dreamed of you, Lily. Many times." My hand trembled as I reached for my water glass. What did that mean? What could a royal seer possibly see in someone like me? "You're wondering why I came here," he continued, keeping his voice low enough that only I could hear. "To this small, unremarkable pack at the edge of my territories." I nodded slightly, grateful that he seemed willing to interpret my silence rather than demand I break it. 10 years ago, something was stolen from me, he said, his voice hardening almost imperceptibly. Something irreplaceable. The trail led here, to the Silver Crescent pack, but went cold. For a decade I've searched, following whispers, hunting shadows. He turned to face me fully, his eyes gleaming with an emotion I couldn't name. And then, 3 nights ago, I heard a voice by a creek, a voice singing an ancient lullaby that only a handful of people in this world would know. He reached out, his fingers brushing against my pendant. A nightingale's song, my mother's song. My world tilted sharply. What was he saying? The lullaby had been my grandmother's, passed down through generations of our family. It couldn't possibly connect to the Alpha King. "You look confused, little nightingale," he said softly. "That's understandable. You've been kept in the dark for a very long time." Before I could process his words, a commotion erupted at the far end of the hall. A wolf I didn't recognize, clearly one of the king's guards, burst through the doors, blood streaming from a wound on his forehead. "Your Majesty," he called, his voice strained. "We're under attack. Rogue wolves have breached the northern perimeter." The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly from celebration to crisis. Pack members rose from their seats, some reaching for weapons, others moving protectively toward family members. The Alpha King stood, his posture changing, power radiating from him in almost visible waves. "How many?" he demanded. "At least 30, sire. They bear no pack markings. The king turned to Thomas, our alpha. Secure your people. This attack is not random. They come for something specific. Or someone, I thought, a chill running through me. The timing couldn't be coincidence. Chaos erupted as people rushed to follow orders. I stood, intending to retreat to my room, to hide as I always had when danger threatened. But the Alpha King's hand closed around my wrist, his grip gentle but unbreakable. You stay with me, he said, his tone brooking no argument. Thomas approached us, his expression conflicted. Your Majesty, perhaps it would be safer if Lily went with the other non-fighters to the secure rooms below. The Alpha King's eyes narrowed slightly. Safer for whom, Alpha Thomas? For Lily, or for those who have kept secrets from her for a decade? Thomas paled visibly. I don't understand. I think you do. The king cut him off. But this conversation will wait. Protect your pack. I will protect what's mine. What's mine? The words echoed in my head as the Alpha King guided me swiftly from the hall, his guards forming a protective circle around us. We moved through corridors I'd walked 1,000 times, yet everything felt alien now, transformed by danger and revelations half-spoken. Where are we going? I mouthed, forgetting momentarily my vow of silence. Somewhere safe, he replied, his eyes scanning our surroundings continuously. Somewhere we can talk without interruption. Outside, the night had turned from peaceful to threatening. Distant howls echoed through the forests surrounding the pack house, and the scent of unfamiliar wolves tainted the air. The Alpha King led me toward a black SUV waiting at the rear entrance, its engine running. Get in, he instructed, opening the door for me. I hesitated, suddenly struck by the reality of what was happening. I was about to leave everything I'd known for the past decade, my pack, my sanctuary, imperfect as it was, with a man who was still essentially a stranger. A man who claimed to know secrets about me that even I didn't understand. Lily, he said, his voice softening as he read the fear in my eyes. I have searched for you for 10 years. I will not harm you. I swear it on my crown, on my life. He extended his hand to me. Trust me. Just until we're safe. A crash sounded from somewhere nearby, followed by shouts and the distinctive sounds of fighting. Time had run out. Decision made. I placed my hand in his and allowed him to help me into the vehicle. As we pulled away from the pack house, I looked back through the window at the only home I could remember. Flames had begun to rise from the northern wing, orange light painting the night sky. Wolves fought on the grounds, shadows against the fire's glow. They won't find what they're looking for, the Alpha King said, watching the scene with grim satisfaction. Not anymore. I turned to him, questions burning in my eyes. They were looking for you, little nightingale. He reached across the space between us, his fingers lightly tracing my cheekbone. The question is, do you know why? I shook my head slowly, but deep inside, in places I had locked away years ago, fragments of memory began to stir. A night of storm and blood, secrets overheard, and a decision that had silenced me for a decade. Perhaps I did know, after all. As the pack house disappeared from view, I felt something shifting inside me, like ice beginning to crack after a long winter. The Alpha King watched me, his silver eyes reflecting the moonlight now streaming through the windows. It's time, Lily, he said quietly. Time for silence to end and truth to begin. The drive lasted for hours, winding through forests and mountains I'd never seen. I sat in silence, watching the landscape change from the familiar territory of the Silver Crescent Pack to regions unknown to me. The Alpha King, Xavier, as his guards called him, spoke quietly on his phone, issuing commands and receiving updates about the attack. The rogues have been contained, he said eventually, ending a call and turning his attention to me. Your pack suffered injuries but no casualties. Relief washed through me. Despite everything, I didn't wish harm on the wolves I'd lived among for so long. I nodded my thanks for the information. You care about them, he observed, studying my expression. Even after they kept you hidden away, denied your true heritage. I frowned, shaking my head in confusion. What heritage? As far as I knew, I was the orphaned daughter of unremarkable wolves, taken in by my grandmother until her passing, then raised communally by the pack as was custom for those without immediate family. You truly don't know, he said, wonder creeping into his voice. They managed to keep it from you completely. I gestured impatiently, my frustration mounting. If he had answers, I wanted them now. Patience, little nightingale, he said, the hint of a smile softening his features. We're almost there. The SUV turned onto a private road guarded by wolves who straightened to attention as we approached. Massive iron gates opened, revealing a sprawling estate nestled against a mountainside. Stone walls rose imposingly, but it was the structure at the center that took my breath away. A modern castle of glass and stone that seemed to grow from the very mountain itself, its windows reflecting the pre-dawn light like countless mirrors. Welcome to Blackcrest, Xavier said, watching my reaction. My private residence. As we pulled to a stop in the circular driveway, I noticed more guards positioned strategically around the grounds. This wasn't merely a home, it was a fortress. A woman emerged from the main entrance as our doors were opened, the seer I had noticed at dinner. Veda. Up close, she appeared ageless, her dark skin smooth and unlined despite the silver threading through her black hair. You found her, Veda said, her voice surprisingly melodic. She approached me, her eyes, so dark they appeared almost black, studying me with unsettling intensity. After all this time, yes, Xavier replied, placing a hand at the small of my back to guide me forward. Though she still hasn't spoken to me, Veda smiled knowingly. She will, when she's ready. She turned, gesturing for us to follow. I've prepared rooms for her, as you requested, and tea in the solarium. The interior of Blackcrest was as impressive as its exterior. Soaring ceilings, minimalist design softened by unexpected touches of warmth, furred throws over sleek furniture, ancient tapestries hanging on modern walls, the scent of pine and cinnamon in the air. It was a study in contrasts, much like its owner. I followed them through corridors lined with artwork that spoke of both history and power, ancestral portraits alongside contemporary pieces, all exuding wealth, but selected with evident care. We arrived at a circular room made almost entirely of glass, offering panoramic views of the mountains now turning gold in the morning light. A low table had been set with an elegant tea service. Please sit, Xavier said, gesturing to a plush chair. You must be exhausted. I was, both physically and emotionally, but I remained standing, crossing my arms. I was tired of being led, of being kept in suspense. I wanted answers. He seemed to read my thoughts, nodding slightly. Very well, no more delays. He turned to Veda. Give us privacy. Once we were alone, Xavier poured 2 cups of tea, the steam rising between us like the questions hanging in the air. He handed one to me, then indicated again that I should sit. This time, I complied. I told you that something was stolen from me 10 years ago, he began, taking a seat across from me. What I didn't say was what that something was. He paused, his silver eyes holding mine. It was a child, my sister's child, my niece. I froze, the teacup halfway to my lips. My sister, Alara, was killed during a coup attempt shortly after giving birth, he continued, pain evident in his voice, despite the decade that had passed. I was fighting to secure the throne, to unite the kingdoms after our father's death. By the time I reached her, she was dying. Her last words to me were about her daughter, how she had hidden her, how I must find her and protect her. His jaw tightened. But when I went to retrieve the child, she was gone. Taken. My hands began to tremble, tea spilling over the rim of the cup. This couldn't be what it seemed. I searched for years, Xavier said, watching me carefully, following every lead, hunting every whisper of a female pup with unusual abilities. The trail led to the Silver Crescent pack, but by then the child, if it was her, had supposedly lost her voice to trauma. I had no way to verify her identity without hearing her speak the ancient language that only royal blood can pronounce correctly. He set his cup down and leaned forward, his expression intense. And then, 3 nights ago, I heard you sing by that creek. The lullaby, my mother's lullaby, passed down through generations of the royal bloodline. A song you could not possibly know unless you were of that bloodline. My world tilted, reality reshaping itself around these new revelations. I shook my head vehemently. No. This was impossible. I was Lily, just Lily. A nobody who had witnessed something terrible and chosen silence as protection. I wasn't a lost princess or whatever he was suggesting. You don't believe me, he said, reading my expression. That's understandable. You've been lied to for your entire life. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet pouch. Perhaps this will help convince you. He tipped the contents into his palm. A ring of intricate silver design, set with a moonstone that seemed to glow with inner light. This belonged to my sister, he said softly. It's the twin to my own. He showed me his right hand, where an identical ring adorned his finger. Royal signet rings, passed down for generations. They're attuned to our bloodline. They warm to the touch of those who carry the royal blood. To anyone else, they remain cold. He extended his hand, offering me the ring. I stared at it, afraid to touch it, afraid of what it might reveal or fail to reveal. Try it, he urged gently. What harm can come from simply touching a ring? Slowly, reluctantly, I reached out. The moment my fingers made contact with the silver, warmth spread through my hand, the moonstone flaring with blue-white light. I jerked back, startled. You see? Xavier said, satisfaction and something like relief in his voice. Blood doesn't lie, Lily, or should I say Princess Ariana. The name hit me like a physical blow, Ariana. It echoed in some deep, forgotten part of me, awakening fragments of memory, a woman's gentle voice, the scent of jasmine, strong arms holding me close during a thunderstorm. I stood abruptly, backing away from him, my heart racing. This was too much, too fast. I needed air, needed space to think. Understanding crossed Xavier's face. You need time, he said, rising as well. I've waited 10 years. I can wait a little longer. He placed the ring on the table between us. This belongs to you. Take it when you're ready. A soft knock at the door interrupted us. Veda entered, her expression grave. Forgive me, Your Majesty, but Reiner has arrived with news from the border. He insists it's urgent. Xavier nodded, then turned back to me. Think about what I've told you. Eat. We'll continue this conversation when you're ready. He moved toward the door, then paused. You're safe here, Lily. Safer than you've been in a decade. Remember that. After he'd gone, Veda approached me, her manner gentler than before. I'll show you to your rooms, she said. You look ready to collapse. She was right. Exhaustion pressed down on me like a physical weight, making it difficult to even process the revelations of the last few hours. I followed her through more corridors until we reached a suite of rooms that took my breath away. A bedroom larger than the entire basement area I'd occupied at the pack house. A bathroom with a sunken tub big enough to swim in. A sitting room with a fireplace already lit against the morning chill, and a balcony offering views of forest and mountains. The king had these prepared long ago, Veda said, watching my amazement. He never lost hope of finding you. I turned to her, questions burning in my eyes. Yes, I believe you are who he says. She answered my unspoken query. I have seen you in dreams since you were a child. A silent princess with hair like sunlight and a voice locked away. She moved to a wardrobe and opened it, revealing clothing in various styles, all in my size. Rest now. Change. When you wake, we can talk more. After she left, I stood in the center of the room, feeling adrift in luxury after years of sparse existence. The silver gown I still wore suddenly felt like a costume, a prop in someone else's story. I stripped it off, letting it pool on the floor, and pulled on a simple robe I found hanging in the bathroom. On the balcony, I breathed deeply, filling my lungs with pine-scented air as the sun continued its ascent. Below, wolves patrolled the grounds. Xavier's personal guard, I assumed. I was both protected and contained. My fingers found the nightingale pendant at my throat, my grandmother's pendant. Or had she even been my grandmother? Had everything I'd been told about my past been a lie? I remembered the night that had stolen my voice. Or rather, the night I had chosen to lock it away. I had been 16, wandering the woods near the pack house after dark, breaking rules as teenagers often do. I'd overheard a conversation between Thomas, our alpha, and a stranger whose face remained hidden in shadow. "The king grows closer to finding her," the stranger had said. "You swore you would keep her hidden, and so I have," Thomas had replied. "She suspects nothing of her true identity." "Good. She must never know. If the Alpha King discovers her existence, everything we've worked for will be undone. The girl is the key." I had stepped back, confused and frightened, only to snap a twig beneath my foot. Both men had whirled toward the sound. Thomas's eyes had widened in recognition, and then everything had happened so quickly. The stranger lunging toward me, Thomas's shout of warning, my flight through the forest, the storm breaking overhead, masking my panicked breathing as I hid. Later that night, as I lay sleepless in my bed, I made my decision. If my voice, my questions, had put me in danger, then silence would be my protection. I would become invisible, forgettable. No threat to anyone's secrets, and it had worked, for 10 years. Until now. The sun had fully risen, bathing the mountains in golden light. I was exhausted beyond measure, but my mind refused to quiet. I returned to the bedroom and crawled into the enormous bed, expecting to lie awake for hours. Instead, I fell instantly into a deep sleep filled with fragments of dreams. A woman singing the nightingale's song, a man with silver eyes lifting me high above his head, the scent of jasmine, and always, underlying everything, a sense of belonging I had never known at the Silver Crescent Pack. I awoke to twilight, disoriented until memory rushed back. The Alpha King, the attack, the revelations, the ring. I sat up abruptly, my heart pounding. Hours had passed. The room was now cast in shadows, the only light coming from the dying fire in the adjacent sitting room. Moving quietly, I rose and found fresh clothing laid out. Simple leggings and a soft sweater, comfortable shoes. I dressed quickly, then paused, listening. The suite was silent, but beyond the main door I could hear faint movements. A guard, probably, assigned to watch over me. My gaze fell on the balcony doors. They were unlocked, offering access to the grounds below. Not an escape. I had nowhere to go, and Xavier's wolves would catch me before I reached the gates, but perhaps a chance for solitude, for thinking without the weight of others' expectations. Decision made, I slipped outside. The autumn air had turned crisp with evening, but the sweater was warm enough. I found a path leading from beneath the balcony into gardens illuminated by soft landscape lighting. Following it, I wandered deeper into the grounds, eventually discovering a small stone bench beside an ornamental pond. I sat, watching the reflection of the rising moon ripple across the water's surface. For the first time since Xavier had spoken those 5 devastating words, "I've heard your voice, Lily," I felt my thoughts beginning to settle, to make sense of the impossible. If what he said was true, if I was indeed Princess Ariana, niece to the Alpha King, heir to royal blood, then who had taken me from my family? Who had hidden me among the Silver Crescent Pack, and why? Thomas had known. That much was clear from the conversation I'd overheard, but how deep did the conspiracy go? And more importantly, what did it mean for my future? Heavy thoughts for one so young, a voice said from behind me. I turned sharply to find Veda standing a few paces away, her silver-streaked hair gleaming in the moonlight. She approached, gesturing to the space beside me on the bench. "May I?" I nodded, shifting to make room for her. "Xavier is concerned," she said, settling beside me. "He fears he has overwhelmed you with truth after so many years of lies." I shrugged, neither confirming nor denying. "You haven't spoken yet," she observed. "Not to him, not to me. 10 years of silence is a hard habit to break, I imagine." I nodded again, grateful for her understanding. "But eventually, you must speak, Ariana," she continued, using the name that both was and wasn't mine. "Your voice is more than just sound. It is your birthright, your power. The very thing your enemies tried to take from you." I looked at her questioningly. "Oh yes," she said, correctly interpreting my expression. "Those who stole you, who hid you away, They wanted more than just to separate you from your heritage. They wanted to ensure you would never claim the power that is your birthright. She reached into a pocket of her flowing dress and withdrew something that glinted in the moonlight. The ring Xavier had shown me earlier. He asked me to bring this to you, she said, offering it. Not to pressure you, but to give you the choice. Always, the choice must be yours. I stared at the ring, my thoughts tumbling over each other. To accept it would mean acknowledging everything Xavier had told me, taking the first step on a path I couldn't fully see or understand. But to refuse it would be to cling to a life built on lies, a false identity, a silence that had protected me but also imprisoned me. Slowly, I extended my hand. Veda placed the ring in my palm, where it instantly warmed, the moonstone glowing softly in the darkness. It felt right somehow, like a piece of myself returning after a long absence. There, Veda said softly. The first choice made, the first step taken. I slipped the ring onto my finger, where it fit perfectly. The warmth spread up my arm, settling somewhere deep in my chest, as though awakening something that had long slumbered. Come, she said, rising. The king waits to continue your conversation. And this time, perhaps, you might consider letting him hear your voice once more. I followed Veda back through the gardens, the ring on my finger a constant reminder of the choice I'd made, to acknowledge, if not fully accept, the identity Xavier claimed was mine. The weight of it felt strange, yet somehow familiar, like a memory from another life trying to surface. We entered Blackcrest through a different door than the one I'd exited, passing through what appeared to be a music room with instruments I couldn't name, then a library with shelves stretching to the ceiling. Finally, we arrived at a study where Xavier stood by a window, his powerful silhouette outlined against the night sky. He turned as we entered, his eyes immediately finding the ring on my finger. Something like relief crossed his features. Thank you, Veda, he said, dismissing her with a nod. After she'd gone, Xavier gestured to a seating area near a fireplace where flames danced cheerfully, casting warm light over leather chairs, and a low table bearing a carafe of amber liquid and 2 glasses. Hungry? He asked as I sat. I can have food brought. I shook my head. Despite having slept through the day, I felt no hunger, only a growing determination to understand the truth. All of it. You have questions, he said, pouring himself a drink. Many, I imagine. I nodded, then hesitated, uncertain how to communicate without speaking. My silence had become such an integral part of me that breaking it seemed almost impossible even now. Understanding my dilemma, Xavier reached for a leather portfolio on a nearby desk and handed it to me, along with a pen. Write, if you prefer, though I would give much to hear your voice again. I accepted the materials and opened to a blank page. My hand hovered over it for a moment before I wrote in careful script. Why did they take me? Xavier read my question and sighed, his expression darkening. Politics. Power. The eternal struggle for control. He took a seat across from me, cradling his glass. To understand fully, you need to know something of our history. He leaned back, his eyes distant, as though seeing into the past. For centuries, the 7 werewolf kingdoms existed in a state of perpetual conflict. Alliances formed and broke like waves against shore. Territories shifted with each generation. Blood spilled endlessly. My father, King Matthias, dreamed of unification. 1 kingdom, 1 throne, 1 peace. He spent his life working toward it, through diplomacy when possible, through force when necessary. By the time of his death, he had secured alliances with 5 of the 7 kingdoms. Xavier's expression hardened. But there were those who preferred chaos to order, who profited from division. Chief among them was Lord Damon of the Northern Territory and his followers, who called themselves the Shadow Council. I wrote quickly. The stranger speaking with Thomas that night. Could he have been from this council? Almost certainly. Xavier nodded. When my father died, poisoned, we later learned, the fragile unity he'd built threatened to collapse. As his heir, I fought to maintain control, to complete what he had started. Meanwhile, My sister Ilara, your mother, was heavily pregnant. He paused, pain flickering across his features. The attack came during her most vulnerable moment, while giving birth to you. The Shadow Council sought to eliminate both of you, destroying any threat to their power. I arrived too late to save Ilara, but she had hidden you with her most trusted handmaiden. By the time I secured the throne and united the kingdoms, you had vanished. The handmaiden was found dead, and you— He gestured helplessly. You had disappeared without trace. Why was I such a threat to them? I wrote, my hand trembling slightly. Xavier studied me for a long moment before answering. Because of what you are, Ariana, what you were born to be. He set his glass down and leaned forward, his silver eyes reflecting the firelight. In each generation of our bloodline, one child is born with the sovereign voice, a power that goes beyond mere speech. Those who possess it can command absolute obedience from any wolf who hears them. My pen froze above the paper, shock coursing through me. It's an ancient magic, he continued, passed down since the first werewolves walked the earth. My father had it. I do not. That gift passed to your mother, and from her to you. I don't understand, I wrote. I've never commanded anyone. No, Xavier agreed. Because you've never spoken in the ancient language, the language of the first wolves, which activates the power, and without proper training, without knowing your heritage, you wouldn't have known how. He rose, moving to a bookshelf where he withdrew an ancient-looking tome bound in dark leather. The Shadow Council feared you would grow into your power and use it to complete what your grandfather and I had started. Total unification of all werewolves under one rule. They couldn't kill you. Your death would have martyred you, strengthened loyalty to our bloodline. So instead, they hid you, raised you to believe you were no one of importance. The trauma that supposedly took my voice. It never happened, did it? I suspect not, Xavier said, returning to his seat with the book. More likely, they encouraged your silence through manipulation, perhaps even through magic. A silent princess cannot command with the sovereign voice. The pieces began to fall into place. Thomas's strange behavior over the years, the way I'd been kept apart from pack politics, the odd protective instincts some members had shown toward me while others had treated me with inexplicable resentment. The attack last night. Who were they? What did they want? Xavier's expression hardened. Remnants of the Shadow Council. They've operated in secret since I took the throne, diminished but not destroyed. Somehow, they learned I was close to finding you and made one last desperate attempt to recapture you. He opened the book, revealing pages covered in strange symbols I'd never seen before, yet somehow recognized, as though they spoke to something deep within me. These are the words of the first language, he explained, the language of command, of power. Your power, by birthright. I stared at the symbols, feeling a strange resonance as though they called to me across centuries. My fingers traced one particular marking that seemed to pulse with inner light. That one, Xavier said softly, means truth, fitting that it would draw you. Setting the book aside, I wrote, if what you say is true, if I am this lost princess with this power, what happens now? Xavier considered my question, his expression unreadable. That depends entirely on you, Ariana. I have found you, fulfilled my promise to your mother. I can keep you safe here at Blackcrest for as long as you wish. You can learn about your heritage, your abilities, at your own pace. Or, he hesitated. Or, I prompted. Or you can reclaim your place publicly. Stand beside me as my heir, as the princess you were born to be. Help me finish what our family started, true peace among all werewolves. The magnitude of the choice staggered me. For 10 years I had been nobody, invisible, silent, safe in my insignificance. The prospect of stepping into the light, of claiming a birthright that would place me at the center of werewolf politics, was terrifying. I don't know if I can be what you need, I wrote, my handwriting betraying my uncertainty. Xavier's expression softened unexpectedly. I don't need a weapon or a political tool, Ariana. I've spent 10 years searching for my sister's child, for family, for the last connection to Ilara. His voice roughened with emotion. Whatever you choose, you will always have a place here, with me. Something inside me shifted at his words. A loosening of the tight knot I'd carried in my chest for a decade. Family. The concept was almost foreign after so many years of isolation. A knock at the study door interrupted us. Xavier called for the visitor to enter, and a guard appeared, his expression grave. "Your Majesty, forgive the intrusion. We've captured an intruder attempting to breach the eastern perimeter." Xavier tensed. "One of the rogues from last night?" "No, sire. It's the beta of the Silver Crescent pack, James. He claims he has urgent information regarding the princess." My pulse quickened. James, who had always been distantly kind to me, who had warned me before the dinner to remember where my loyalty lay. What could he want? "Bring him," Xavier ordered, then turned to me as the guard departed. "You don't have to see him if you don't wish to." I hesitated, then wrote, "I want to hear what he has to say." Minutes later, the guard returned with James between two others, his hands bound before him. He looked disheveled, with a cut above one eye and dirt on his clothing. But his expression cleared when he saw me. "Lily," he said, relief evident in his voice. "You're safe." Xavier moved to stand slightly before me, a protective gesture that didn't go unnoticed by James, whose eyes narrowed. "Why have you come, Beta?" Xavier demanded. "Your Alpha must have informed you that Lily, or Princess Ariana to use her true name, is under my protection now." James's gaze returned to me, searching. "Is it true then? You know who you are?" I nodded slowly, uncertain of his motives. "I've suspected for years," James said quietly. But Thomas would never confirm it. He kept all of us in the dark, operating on orders from someone else. Someone he feared more than he feared you, Your Majesty. Xavier's posture remained rigid with suspicion. "What information do you claim to have?" "Thomas is dead," James said bluntly. "Killed last night after you left. The pack is in chaos, vulnerable to those who attacked us." Shock ran through me. Thomas, dead? Despite his deception, he had been a constant in my life. A flawed protector. "How?" Xavier demanded. "Poison," James replied. "A method favored by the Shadow Council, I'm told. But before he died, he gave me this." He nodded toward his jacket pocket. "May I?" At Xavier's tense nod, one guard loosened James's bonds enough for him to reach into his pocket and withdraw a small black device, a USB drive. "Thomas kept records," James explained. "Insurance, he called it. Names, dates, locations. Everything about the conspiracy to hide the princess. He made me swear I would bring it to you both if anything happened to him." Xavier took the drive, examining it with suspicion, "And we should trust this. Why?" "Thomas was many things," James said, his eyes finding mine again. "But in the end, he regretted his part in all of this. He truly believed keeping Lily hidden was protecting her. When he realized the council never intended to let her live once they reclaimed her, he trailed off, then straightened his shoulders. "I've brought this to you at great personal risk. The Shadow Council has spies everywhere. If they learn of my betrayal, I'm as good as dead." I looked at Xavier, my decision already forming. Whatever James's true motives, the information he brought could be valuable. And despite everything, I couldn't forget the small kindnesses he had shown me over the years. I wrote quickly, "We should hear him out. See what's on the drive." Xavier studied my note, then nodded. "Very well. James will remain under guard while we examine the contents. If his information proves true, we will discuss what happens next." As the guards led James away, he called back over his shoulder. "Lily, Princess, whatever happens, know that some of us truly cared about your welfare, whatever our mistakes." After he'd gone, Xavier gestured to a sleek laptop on his desk. "Shall we see what secrets Thomas kept?" Together, we reviewed the contents of the drive, hundreds of files documenting a conspiracy more extensive than I could have imagined. Thomas had meticulously recorded everything. The initial plot to kidnap me as an infant, the network of wolves across multiple packs who had maintained the deception, and most damning of all, the identities of the current Shadow Council members, wolves who held positions of power in various territories while secretly working to undermine Xavier's rule. "This is extraordinary," Xavier murmured as we finished reviewing the main documents. With this evidence, we can finally dismantle their network completely. I sat back, overwhelmed by the scope of the deception that had shaped my life. So many wolves involved, so many lies told, and at the center of it all, me. A child hidden away, a princess denied her heritage, a weapon unforged. A new thought struck me, and I wrote quickly, if Thomas kept these records as insurance, why didn't the council kill him years ago? Xavier considered this, frowning. A valid question. Unless... His eyes widened slightly. Unless Thomas wasn't their only asset within your pack. Unless someone else, someone they trusted more, was watching him. The implication hung in the air between us. Unspoken, but clear. We still didn't know who to trust. Not completely. Even James's apparent betrayal of the council could be part of a deeper deception. What do we do now? I wrote. Xavier closed the laptop, his expression resolute. Now, we prepare. The Shadow Council will realize soon, if they haven't already, that their secrets are exposed. They'll make their move, perhaps their final move, to either recapture you or eliminate you entirely. Fear rippled through me, but underneath it lay something else. A steely determination I hadn't felt in years. I was tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of silence. Xavier must have seen something of this in my face, because he leaned forward, his silver eyes intent on mine. There's something else you should know, Ariana. Something Thomas's files confirm. I raised an eyebrow in question. The sovereign voice, your power, it isn't just about commanding obedience. In its purest form, when spoken by one who fully embraces their heritage, it can reveal truth. No wolf, no matter how practiced in deception, can lie in the presence of the true sovereign voice. The significance of this revelation hit me like a physical blow. If what he said was true, then I possessed not just a weapon, but a tool for justice. A way to cut through decades of lies and manipulation. How do I access this power? I wrote, my hand steady now with newfound purpose. You must speak again, Xavier said simply. Not in the common tongue, but in the language of the first wolves. I can teach you the words, but the power behind them must come from you, from your acceptance of who you truly are. I stared at him, the magnitude of what he was suggesting sinking in. To speak again after 10 years of silence. To embrace an identity I'd never known was mine. To step from shadows into a light so bright it threatened to blind me. But what was the alternative? To hide away at Blackcrest forever, always looking over my shoulder, always wondering when the Shadow Council might find me again? To deny the truth of my heritage? To reject the legacy my mother had died protecting? Decision made, I set down my pen and closed the portfolio. Xavier watched me, understanding dawning in his eyes as I straightened my shoulders and met his gaze directly. You're ready, he said softly. Not a question, but a recognition. I nodded, feeling a weight lifting even as a new one settled on my shoulders, the weight of responsibility, of destiny long deferred. Then we begin tonight, Xavier said, rising from his chair with new energy. It's time the shadow gave way to light. It's time for the nightingale to sing again. As we left the study together, the ring on my finger seemed to pulse with warmth, as though approving my choice. After 10 years of living as nobody, I had taken the first step toward becoming who I was always meant to be, not just Lily, not just the mute girl with secrets too dangerous to speak, but Ariana, princess of the United Werewolf Kingdoms, heir to the sovereign voice, niece to the Alpha King, and soon, very soon, the world would hear me roar. Block 5. Dawn broke over Blackcrest, painting the mountains in hues of gold and amber. I stood on the balcony of my suite, watching the sun ascend the sky, feeling both trepidation and resolve for what was to come. Today, after a decade of silence, I would speak again. The past 24 hours had been a whirlwind of preparation. Xavier had spent hours teaching me the rudiments of the first language, ancient words that felt strangely familiar on my tongue as I practiced them silently. Veda had guided me through meditations designed to connect me with my inner strength, the wellspring from which the sovereign voice would emerge. And James, now provisionally trusted under heavy guard, had provided invaluable insights into the Shadow Council's operations and likely strategies. A soft knock at my door announced Veda's arrival. She entered carrying a garment bag. "It's time," she said, laying the bag on my bed and unzipping it to reveal a gown of deep midnight blue, embroidered with silver threads that formed the pattern of stars and crescents, the royal insignia. "Your uncle awaits you in the great hall." As I dressed, I caught my reflection in the mirror and barely recognized myself. Gone was the hunched posture of someone trying to disappear. Gone was the perpetual fear in my eyes. In their place stood a young woman with straight shoulders and a determined gaze. Her light blonde hair swept up in an elegant style that highlighted the strong line of her jaw. The silver nightingale pendant still rested at my throat, a reminder of the journey that had brought me here. Veda placed a simple silver circlet upon my head, not a crown, not yet, but a symbol of what I was about to reclaim. "You look like your mother," she said softly. "She would be proud." The great hall of Blackcrest was filled when I entered. Xavier's most trusted advisors and guards lined the walls, while at the center stood the Alpha King himself, resplendent in formal attire with his own silver crown catching the light from the massive windows. Beside him, still under guard but no longer bound, stood James. And in the corner, heavily restrained between 4 guards, was a man I'd never seen before. Tall and lean with cold eyes that tracked my entrance with undisguised hatred. "Lord Valen," Xavier said, gesturing toward the prisoner. "High Counselor of the Shadow Council, captured attempting to infiltrate Blackcrest last night. He's here to witness your reclamation, Ariana." I approached the dais where Xavier stood, each step measured and deliberate, the weight of every gaze pressed upon me. But I kept my eyes forward, focused on my path. "The preparations are complete," Xavier said when I reached him. "You know the words. The rest must come from within you." He took my hand, squeezing it gently. "Are you ready?" I nodded, then turned to face the assembled witnesses. For 10 years I had remained silent, believing my voice would bring danger. Now, I understood that my silence had been the true threat. To myself, to my heritage, to the peace my family had fought and died for. Slowly, I reached up and removed the nightingale pendant from my throat, holding it in my palm where it caught the morning light. My grandmother, or the woman I had known as my grandmother, had given it to me as protection and reminder. "Your voice is your power," she had said. Now I understood the dual meaning of those words. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of the pendant, the circlet, the ring upon my finger. Symbols of a legacy I was only beginning to understand. When I opened them again, I looked directly at Lord Valen, the man who represented all that had been taken from me. And I spoke. The words that emerged from my throat after 10 years of silence were not in the common tongue, but in the ancient language Xavier had taught me, syllables that seemed to resonate with the very stones of the hall, that vibrated with power beyond mere sound. Veritas vendeler, noctis finem, lux oritur, truth emerges, night ends, light rises. The effect was instantaneous and stunning. A visible shimmer seemed to emanate from me, rippling through the air like heat above summer stones. Lord Valen jerked in his restraints as though physically struck, his eyes widening in shock and fear. "Impossible," he gasped. "You cannot. The ritual was perfect. You should never have." "The sovereign voice," Xavier said, satisfaction evident in his tone. "It awakens." I stepped forward, closer to Valen, feeling power coursing through me like a river long dammed, now flowing free. When I spoke again, my voice was stronger, more confident. "Revelato culpam, confitare peccata." Reveal guilt, confess sins. Valen struggled visibly, sweat breaking out on his forehead as he fought against the compulsion of my words. But the power of the sovereign voice could not be denied. His resistance crumbled, and words began pouring from him. Confessions of plots spanning decades, of the assassination of my grandfather, of the attack that killed my mother, of the conspiracy to keep me hidden and ignorant of my heritage. "We feared what you would become," he gasped, hatred still burning in his eyes despite the truth spilling from his lips. The prophecy spoke of a sovereign voice that would unite all wolves under one rule, the end of our independence, our way of life. I tilted my head, considering him. Then I looked to Xavier, who nodded encouragingly. "Dic mihi profidie," I commanded. "Tell me of the prophecy." The last sovereign will rise from shadow, voice unbound after great silence. Valen recited, the words clearly painful for him to speak. She will unite the divided, heal the broken, and bring a peace that spans generations. From her line will come the forever kings and queens, and never again shall wolf turn against wolf. Murmurs ran through the assembled witnesses. I caught James's gaze. He looked stunned, but somehow unsurprised, as though he had always suspected something extraordinary lay within me. I turned to Xavier, switching to the common tongue, my voice rusty from disuse but growing stronger with each word. Is this why they feared me? A prophecy of peace? Xavier nodded. Peace threatens those who profit from conflict, niece. The Shadow Council has maintained power through division for centuries. Your existence, and the fulfillment of the prophecy, would end their influence forever. I considered this, then turned back to Valen. Nomina sociorum revelato. Reveal the names of your associates. One by one, Valen named the members of the Shadow Council, wolves in positions of influence throughout the 7 kingdoms. Xavier's scribes recorded each name, each position, while his captains received immediate orders to locate and detain those named. When the confession was complete, Valen slumped in his restraints, defeated, but still defiant. Kill me and be done with it, he spat. I would rather die than live to see our world destroyed by your peace. I studied him. This man who had orchestrated so much suffering, who had robbed me of my mother, my identity, a decade of my life. Rage bubbled within me, tempting me to use the sovereign voice for vengeance rather than justice. Instead, I turned to Xavier. He will face trial, I said, my voice steady. All of them will. Justice, not revenge, will be our path forward. Pride shone in Xavier's eyes as he nodded. As you wish, Princess. As Valen was led away, Xavier addressed the assembled witnesses. You have seen the truth revealed, the prophecy confirmed. Princess Ariana has returned to us. The time of shadows is ending. He turned to me, extending his hand. Will you stand beside me, niece? Will you help me build the peace your mother dreamed of? I took his hand, feeling the weight of destiny settling upon my shoulders, not as a burden, but as a purpose long denied. I will, I said simply. After the ceremony, I stood with Xavier on the grand balcony overlooking the mountains. The news of my return was spreading rapidly throughout the 7 kingdoms, carried by messengers and modern technology alike. Already, loyal packs were pledging allegiance to the restored royal line. What happens now? I asked, still marveling at the sound of my own voice after so many years of silence. Xavier smiled. Now, we build. The Shadow Council will be dismantled, their supporters given the chance to pledge loyalty or face exile. And you, Ariana, will learn to fully command the sovereign voice. Not to control others, but to guide them toward a better future. And James? I asked, thinking of the beta who had risked everything to bring us the evidence we needed. He has requested permission to return to the Silver Crescent Pack to help them rebuild after Thomas's death. Xavier replied. With your approval, I've granted it. They will need leadership in the days ahead. I nodded, grateful that something positive might emerge from the chaos of my former pack. You know, Xavier said after a moment of companionable silence, when I first heard your voice by that creek, singing our family's lullaby, I hardly dared believe I had finally found you. 10 years of searching, of hope alternating with despair. Why did you say those words to me at the dinner? I asked. I've heard your voice. You could have approached me differently, less dramatically. Xavier laughed. I needed to shake you out of the complacency of your silence, to make you question everything you thought you knew. His expression grew serious, and I needed to see your reaction, to confirm what I suspected. I understood. After a decade of deception, certainty had been essential. As the sun reached its zenith, bathing Black Crest in golden light, I felt a sense of peace I had never known before. The nightingale pendant rested once more at my throat, no longer a symbol of necessary silence, but a reminder of the journey that had led me home. There will be challenges ahead, Xavier warned. Those who oppose change will not surrender easily. Let them come, I said, my voice clear and strong. no longer a whisper but a declaration. They tried to silence me once, never again. The Alpha King smiled, pride evident in his silver eyes so like my own. Never again, he agreed. And in that moment, standing beside my uncle with the legacy of my mother and grandfather flowing through my veins, I knew with absolute certainty that the prophecy would be fulfilled. The time of shadows had ended, the nightingale had found her song,